Join us at LifeSource Adventist Fellowship for an evening of culinary creation, focused on wholesome and nutritious meals for a healthy life. Learn from watching live cooking demos, enjoy tasting delicious food, and listen to medical professionals sharing valuable insights. To reserve your free spot now for this evening of inspiration and community, visit lafdenver.org/events and click on Nourish, occurring January 26th from 5 to 7 p.m.
Growing up in Latin America, I noticed something remarkable about the youth in my church. They were deeply engaged between the ages of 7 and 18, participating wholeheartedly in various programs, Sabbath school, and dedicating their lives to God. These young individuals, my friends, were full of energy and enthusiasm, eager to learn and grow in their faith. We even had a Pathfinder club where we went camping and participated in regional competitions. It was quite a lively scene. Much of it is similar here in the North American Division and in the Rocky Mountain Conference. Church activities have played a significant role in the spiritual development of many throughout our region. However, the latest statistics do not favor the growth of our church, and we must do something about it. Current Adventist Archives presentations indicate that the SDA Church is losing 4 out of every 10 new church members. This includes also the young people that are getting baptized in our churches. Some of the members that we're losing are young, some of them a little bit more mature. And as young Adventists transition into adulthood, many face challenges in maintaining the same level of engagement. Yes, there are reasons for this. The pressures of higher education, career, social life often lead to a gradual decline in active participation within our local churches. So we must think about creative ways on how to correct this course. Today, I had the opportunity to speak with Cris Dutra, Young Adult Director of the Carolina Conference, to get some ideas on what's happening and how we can move forward together to ensure that everyone at our church has a way to participate in the mission. My first question to her was, why does it seem as if we are not getting along?
That is not something that we can answer with in just like a quick second, but I can give you an overview from what has been my experience, because not only I am listening to the older generation, but I am also interviewing, I am hanging out, I'm trying to spend as much time as I can with the younger generation, the ones that are pretty much left in the church, because we don't have a lot of them there, but the ones that are there, I'm trying to listen to them and see. And basically, I think the greatest challenge we have is the lack of understanding of the different values for the different age groups. So what I'm seeing is not that the older people don't like the younger people or the young people don't like the older people. That's not what I'm seeing. I see young and old people in love with Jesus, in love with even the church, but they're not able to understand each other's culture. They're not developing connections. They're not communicating well. And what I start realizing is this: the boomers and Gen X, basically boomers, but Gen X is like that middle generation that has a little bit of boomers and a little bit of millennials. So they're kind of like stuck in the middle, and you're going to find them in both ways, okay? But let's say the boomers, a very high value for them was stability, uniformity. Those things were high value for them. The younger generation, transparency, inclusiveness, acceptancy, that is a huge value for them. And then when you come and you talk to the people at the church, and they don't see anything wrong with either one of these values, and they're like, why are we not getting along? Because we accept both of them until we put an issue in the middle. And then I give an example, and they're like, whoa. and I try to make, I was like, what issue that is not so controversial? There's none in Adventist world, but I tried to find the one that was, okay, let's find one that is not going to be so bad. So let's give an example. somebody it's a guest, and he brings meat to the church potluck. The older generation is like, if we teach the health message and we allow them to have meat in the church, we are hypocrites and we're sinning against God. You come to the younger generation and they're like, if you eat meat at your house and you don't allow it in the church, that is being a hypocrite. And they go a little further. I give an example of when I was doing my undergrad, there was a church nearby, very big church, about 1,000 members. And they had once a month, they had a potluck. And they had 3 tables for vegetarians, 3 tables for vegans, 1 table for gluten-free, a huge table of dessert. And in the eyes of the boomer generation, that's like, wow, look how beautiful an example you're giving of the health message. You look at a younger person, they look at that and they're like, so my friend that eats meat is not welcome at this place. The old generation, no, that's not true. They are welcome. And then they start with their battle because they are not seeing each other's eyes. And what I realized was this. The point is not, and this was actually an argument that I had just recently in the church. Somebody was like, so hold it. Are you saying that we have to find a way to please both sides? And that's the wrong question. I am not trying to come here and say, to attract the young people, you need to allow to serve meat at the church. That's not the point. The point is understand the value behind why they think that if we're going to have vegan, vegetarian, we should have meat. Why are they thinking of that? Usually the older generation look at them and say, they're being rebellious. They don't care for God. They don't care for the church. And that's not always the case. The case is, my friend is not feeling accepted. You are making space for all of this type of taste, and you're not allowing my friend to feel accepted. So when we understand that that young person is not in rebellion against the church, but we understand their motives, we change our opinion completely. And we change the way that we're going to talk to them, because now I'm no longer looking at this young person as a rebellious person, but I'm looking at it, oh, it's a high value for them. And that's why let's see how we can work this out.
The example that Cris just gave helps us reflect that the issues we may be experiencing at church might not be related to the visible causes. If you notice in the example, there were multiple tables of food, but having food was not the problem, or even the type of food. It was whether people were accepted or they belonged in the community. So it's not about whether we eat meat or we don't, we serve it or we don't, but rather it is about the core values we hold. And sometimes core values may differ from generation to generation. So often the surface level disagreements can mask deeper underlying issues. And that's what we need to target. Those are the kind of conversations that we need to have. Conversations that allow us to truly get into what are our shared core values. So for instance, if we look beyond the debate of dietary choices, we might find that the real concern is about fostering unity and mutual respect. By focusing on our shared values, such as compassion, humility, making sure that our church is inviting, and our commitment to service to everybody, we can bridge the gaps and find a solution that unites us rather than continue being divided by what is visible. Yet the question remains for many of us and many of our churches, who reaches out first? When I have a disagreement at home, it can often feel better to hold out and have the upper hand, quote unquote, but we are Christians and we cannot act like that. We should be seeking opportunities for collaboration and reaching out to those who we even disagree with, instead of determining who's right or wrong. Cris continues sharing with us some really interesting research that is happening at the NAD level, the North American division, and also something that can help us regain that trust between generations.
I do believe that it's actually going to start with the older generation having a different attitude, but there are both sides, and you're right. I believe the younger generation also has a huge part to play. First of all, not to generalize and this person mistreated me, everybody's going to mistreat me. The church hates me. The entire church hates me. The entire church is judging me. The entire church, like this is the first thing that the young person needs to understand. It's not the entire church. Because you had a bad experience with one person doesn't mean that it's the entire church. And sometimes even if this church is very unfriendly, maybe you need to seek another church, but not give up on God and even on church, because I do believe that church was made by Jesus Christ. And I do believe we need church. We need that community that actually sharpens us. So first of all, is the young person needs to understand that it's not everybody in the church. Second, the young person needs to be open because what happens a lot of times, and that's why I think it's going to have to start with the older, more mature generation, because the younger generation they feel judged by one person and they hide and they put a wall and they disconnect. I play around. We were actually having a pastor's meeting, leadership meeting, and they said, oh, the young people are complaining a lot. Every time I go to a place or here and there, and they're complaining. I was like, praise the Lord. I love the fact that the young people are still complaining, because most of them, they don't complain, they just leave. So if we have young people that are in the churches and they're complaining, it means that they care. Because when they don't care anymore, which that's what happens majority of the time, they're just done. They're like, no matter what I try to do, it's never going to help. It's not going to change. Why bother? In the church, I can't do anything, so I'm going to do it somewhere else. So if the young person takes the time to also try to approach the older people, because it's so interesting. One of the research, I go around the churches and I do what we call growing together, is an NAD training. And in this training, the research shows that this generation is a generation that feels they feel abandoned. And for me, it was really interesting to see that. What they were talking about is that the younger generation wants mentors. They want guidance for the older generation. And that was kind of like a shock to me, because I always thought the younger generation wants to have nothing to do with the older generation. And that's not true. They do, but it needs to be the right mentors, need to be the right guidance, people that are coming not only with an agenda, I'm going to help you, because what is happening a lot is they're feeling conditional acceptance. You can be here. I can help you if you do this, if you act this way, if you do that. So it's not like I really care for you. It's like I care for you if you behave the way I think you should behave. So that drives them away. But when you remove that judgment, the young people are saying, I want mentors. I want people to guide me. And they feel literally abandoned. A lot of the church I go to, they ask, but what do you mean? Parents are very busy. Church leaders are very busy. We're always rushing. We don't have the time. And young people are saying that they want it because we need each other. All of the generations need each other. So the best way, when we overcome the obstacle of they don't want to talk to each other and they finally start talking to each other, they both grow on both sides. The younger generation needs the wisdom of the older generation, and the older generation needs the ideas, the brain, the energy of the younger generation. It's like I said, it's opening it up to the opportunity, to the possibilities of talking to the older generation, and then the older generation empowering the younger generation to take leadership role in the churches.
I don't think the only people that are lonely or feel abandoned are teenagers or young adults. I think everybody in every generation is feeling this, especially nowadays when most of our communities are empty and we are finding less and less human connection. After the break, we're going to explore a little bit more about this generational divide and some things that we can do to make sure that we're supporting each other. Thank you for listening to Living Generously. We hope you're enjoying the podcast. We'll see you after the break.
For more than 110 years, Mile High Academy has been a place where kids like me can learn, grow in faith, and make awesome friends. Everyone here is important, and teachers help us do our best in school and life. Come see what it's like to be part of our family. Visit milehighacademy.org or call 303-744-1069 to find out more. Mile High Academy, because you belong.
We're back with more Living Generously. And as we continue with our discussion of generations and how we can collaborate with each other, one of the most important things is how decisions are made at the church level. I think every church should have representation of all the people that attend that church. But sometimes we don't do that because we are stuck with our customs, a little bit of the tradition that has been set. And culture is something that is hard to change. So Cris gives us a little bit of insight as to how people feel when they're not included in the decision-making process.
In that aspect, and that is one of the greatest issue, because what happens is I would say, all Christian denominations, because more I learn about Christianity, I see that this problem is in our churches. We have the wrong tendency to think that the way I was raised, the way that I was taught my Christianity, the way that I like, sometimes it's not exactly a biblical principle. It's just a tradition that I'm used to it. And then when this young person comes and wants to do something a little different, they think that they're going against the Bible. And my fear of sinning against God by allowing something that is going against the Bible makes me hold creativity. And I think the first thing we need to do is, first of all, put aside our taste. Let's see if this is really biblical. If it's biblical, if it's my personal opinion, hey, let's give it a chance. Let's try to see if this is something that first of all, empowering this young person, they would be more interested. They would be more excited about it. Few things that young people tell us all the time. You guys are making programs. There's a bunch of 60 years old in the board. They plan what they're going to do for the young people. They don't consult with the young people. And then they tell the young people, this is what we're going to do. This is what we're doing for you. And then they get upset because they don't show up. A lot of churches say, oh, but we involve the children, we involve the youth. We let them read the Bible verse and they sing up front and all of that. And this young person told me that after a certain age, because when you're little, you wanted to participate on everything, like, oh my God, they let me read the Bible verse and things like that. But when they get a little bit older, they start analyzing things. And this young adult told me that when churches allow them to sing up front, allow them to read the Bible verse and participate in work B, clean up, take out the garbage and things like that, but don't give them a seat at the table, they feel used. They're like, if you're not going to give me a space where I can share my ideas, I'm not saying that we need to do everything that a young person is telling us. I think the same way in the board, we take ideas here and there and we see what is going to work for the whole body. We need to give the opportunity for the young people to be sitting in the boards too. Because otherwise, they get tired of just being asked to do things. They don't feel like they're serving God. They feel they're serving that person who was busy to do that work. Or I'm up here just for shows, but nobody cares about my opinion. Nobody values my opinion.
I think this last portion from Cris was very helpful. Sometimes when we don't invite people, it doesn't matter if they're really young or they're more mature, into the table to give opinions, to give ideas, we can stifle creativity, and also we diminish the work that we can do together. An engaged church is one that allows all opinions to come into the fore, and then we can get to discuss them, we can get to approve them, and once we have crafted a plan, we can all participate because we are in unity, working for our communities, working for our church, and making sure that everyone feels supported. As a final question for Cris, I asked her, what would she like to see in our churches in the future? And what are some final ideas that we can get to engage every generation?
Oh, I like to see a church where young people are working all of the different ministries, where the church together the church, the entire church, old and young, are outside making a difference to the community, not just inside the walls, where because the young people see the older generation and the Christians living what they talk, like walking the talk, they are excited about the church. They're excited about spreading the gospel. Another complaint of the young people is that we usually say the young people don't care about Jesus' message. They just wanted to have just lovey-dovey, but nothing serious about Jesus. And they're like, no, we want people to take the Jesus message seriously. But I want you guys to live what you're saying, not just say it. So I believe in a community where young people see the older generation being generous, inside and out, helping the community, showing that they are helping and living for the cause of Jesus. The young people are going to be more excited, and I believe the entire church is going to be excited because of that. If you want to have a more youth and young adult driven church where both sides, all generations, grow together, I think the first thing that needs to happen is to seek more information on the topic. I highly recommend receiving in different areas. They have cohorts that they do about growing together. In my conference, we do trainings. So get more information, learn more about it. The book that has all of the research that I was mentioning is called Growing Young. So I highly recommend. They are sold pretty much everywhere that books are sold. And start there with getting information. I believe the older generation has a passion for youth and young adult ministry. They want the churches to flourish. We just need to understand each other a little better. So I leave with that. Try to understand where our young people are coming from. And that's why I say that it needs to start with the older generation, but also in the younger generation, give the older generation a chance. Approach them. Don't give up just because a couple people hurt you. Try a little more. And God is good and faithful. You will find that community that will help you come closer to Jesus.
I hope today's conversation gives you the ideas that you need in order to listen to each other. There is nothing more generous than when we approach someone, we get to listen to their story, and then we get to move forward in mission with them for the benefit of the kingdom of God. I think living generously today taught us that we can reach for the older or younger generation, wherever you are in your journey, with Jesus and bring them into a conversation. Because if we're going to live generous lives, we have to be willing to listen. We have to be willing to engage, and we have to be willing to move forward so that God's name is glorified. I hope you enjoyed today's conversation, and I hope that you're enjoying this podcast. If it's something that's giving you value and that is blessing you, make sure to share with a friend, and also leave us a rating on Spotify or Apple Podcasts if you're listening there. If you're on YouTube, make sure to leave us a comment, feedback, one way or another. And if you have a guest that you want to contact, you want to bring to your area, please let us know. We want to make that introduction so that we can build more generous churches in our world. Thank you for listening to Living Generously today. We'll see you in the next podcast.
Open enrollment at Mile High Academy starts December 15th. Join a community that prioritizes faith, academic excellence, and meaningful connections. From early childhood to upper school, we're here to support your students' growth in a Christ-centered environment. Ready to start your journey? Call us today at 303-744-1069 or visit us at milehighacademy.org. Discover why so many families say you belong at Mile High Academy.